Good evening, everybody. This is the regularly scheduled meeting for the South Haven City Council. It is Monday, December the 20th, 2021, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. Invocation this evening will be given by Elder Prince Covington of Lifebridge Church. And good evening.
Hi.
Smile, smile.
Amen.
Amen.
Let us all bow our heads real quick. So, Father, we just come before the throne of grace, Lord, to say thank you for allowing us to be at this round table. We ask, Lord, that as the leaders in this community, as they begin to discuss the issues and needs that pertain to this community, Father God, that we talk about things openly, Father God, that we communicate, Lord, those things that are important, Lord. We ask, amen, Lord, that as we talk, that we do all things, Lord, in decency and in order. We ask that the audience behind us, Father God, that they listen attentively, Father, that let them actively participate, Lord, that when the questions are asked, they may get the things that they need in the form of an answer. We ask for your wisdom and guidance, Father, in all these things, and we praise you for it. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. If you'll now join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Megan.
Jeff Arnold.
Here.
Chris Campbell.
Here.
Joe Reeser. Steve Schlack.
Here.
George Sleeper.
Here.
Letitia Wilkins.
Here.
Scott Smith.
Here.
I make a motion to excuse Joe Reeser. Second.
Motion second to excuse Joe Reeser. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. He's excused. That takes us to the approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It's approved. And now we have a swearing-in ceremony for one of our new officers, Officer Eric Garcia. Our chief is here, as well as a lot of really good-looking officers out there dressed up. Good evening, Chief. Officer Garcia. Good evening.
Thank you. We want to introduce our newest South Haven police officer, Eric Garcia. He officially starts his field training officer program tomorrow. He is a 2017 graduate from Grand Rapids Community College. He has his associate's degree, and he previously has worked for the Covert Township Police Department for 3.5 years. So we are very happy to have him on board.
And I'll have you raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Michigan, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties of the Office of Police Officer of the City of South Haven, Michigan, according to the best of your ability?
I do.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And next, I have 3 awards that I wanted to present. Our department had a meeting last Monday. We presented several awards to department members. And this evening, I wanted to give special recognition to 3 officers in particular. Sergeant Patrick Carlotto, Officer Antoine Bell, and Officer Mersman. If you'd like to step up here, please. On August 20th, 2021, Sergeant Patrick Carlotto, Officer Antoine Bell, and Officer Chris Mersman were the 3 officers on duty for the South Haven Police Department. They responded to multiple 911 calls reporting active shooting at the South Beach. These officers were the first to arrive to a chaotic, dangerous, and devastating scene. Sergeant Carlotto made the way to the South Pier and quickly assessed what he observed and radioed this information to Officer Bell and Officer Mersman, as well as the dozens of additional first responders, including every member of the South Haven Police Department who were en route. Sergeant Carlotto immediately assessed and triaged the 3 individuals on the pier with injuries and relayed this information, but the shooter was deceased. Officer Bell and Officer Mersman began securing the crime scene, securing evidence, and identifying witnesses. Sergeant Carlotto, in addition to taking command of the scene, assessed the female victim and cleared her airway, preventing further aspiration. Executive Director of the South Haven Area Emergency Services, Brandon Hens, stated that Sergeant Carlotto's quick actions in rendering aid allowed respirations to resume and saved the victim's life despite traumatic injuries. The aforementioned officers responded to an incident that fortunately most police officers are never called upon to do in a career. Their actions that day exemplify their oath to protect and serve, and each did so bravely, knowing their own lives could be in potential danger. Sergeant Carlotto exemplified leadership in directing his unit and also taking quick and decisive actions that saved a life. Therefore, the South Haven Police Department gratefully recognizes Sergeant Patrick Carlotto, Officer Antoine Bell, and Officer Mersman with a unit citation. The South Haven Police Department also recognizes Sergeant Patrick Carlotto with a life-saving ribbon and uniform bar.
Right here, please. You're allowed to smile. Thank you.
Chief, thank you. Gentlemen, thank you. Well deserved. I'll give them a minute to sneak out. And Officer Garcia, you and your family are also welcome. I know you have some young fans. You're welcome to stay if you want, but you're also welcome to sneak out. Good job, kids. Thank you again all for coming. Have a good night. All right, thanks everybody for that. Next, we have the consent agenda items A through I.
Make a motion to approve consent agenda items A through I.
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Arnold,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Schlack,
Yes.
Sleeper,
Yes.
Wilkins,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes. That takes us to old business. City Council will be asked to consider the following actions regarding the Clean, Renewable, and Efficiency Energy Act 295 of 2008. First, we need to hold a public hearing.
I make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion second to open a public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It is open. All right, Kate, you got this one again, just as the follow-up from last meeting?
That's correct. So this is your second reading of this ordinance. So the Clean, Renewable, Efficient Energy Act Act 295 of 2008 requires energy optimization. Our public utility followed that. The state of Michigan is sunsetting those provisions for energy optimization. The BPU did review this and are recommending that the city BPU follow the same sunsetting as the state. So this would be an ordinance that would sunset those energy optimization programs.
very good. This is the public hearing portion of the meeting. Anybody from the public have any questions about what we're sunsetting? Seeing none, want to close that public hearing?
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It is closed. Next, City Council, we ask to consider the adoption of Ordinance 1075, an ordinance to amend rates for the City of South Haven electric utility.
Make a motion for the adoption of ordinance 1075, ordinance to amend the rates for the City of South Haven electric utility.
Second.
All right, we've got the motion, we've got the second. Kate, again, this is just a follow-up from the other one as a result of that
That's correct.
change?
This is just taking out that energy optimization program from the rate ordinance.
Okay. Council questions on that? Nothing. All right. We've got a motion, we've got a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It is adopted. Very good. The next City Council will be asked to consider the following actions regarding the proposed amendment to the Everett Park Phase 2 PUD. First, we're going to, again, have a public hearing.
I make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion second to open the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It is open up. All right. Kate, walk us through the changes.
Thank you, Council, and thank you, Mayor. So what we have here is the Everett Park Phase 2 PUD. So this was from the Planning Commission. There are a number of conditions in addition to other conditions that were from the Planning Commission. I'm just going to go ahead and read these. From the Planning Commission, they recommend that before the city issue any permits, the applicant shall have paid all application fees, permit fees, reimbursable escrow, and other fees related to this request. 2, the site plan shall fully conform with this ordinance and all applicable county, city, state, federal statutes, rules, and regulations. 3, the applicant shall comply with any stipulations of the city engineer, city fire department, or other approving agencies. 4, any additional lighting shall meet the standards of Section 1710 of the zoning ordinance. 5, landscaping shall be maintained on 10% of the site in accordance with Section 1709(5) of the zoning ordinance. 6, all condominium lots shall be marked with monuments as provided in Section 1746 of the zoning ordinance. 7, the applicant shall receive a soil erosion and sedimentation permit and submit a copy to the permit to the city. Now, there was a further 3 conditions that were put on the recommendation to City Council, and I'll go ahead and read those now. 1, to grant a modification to the required front yard setback for the proposed detached single-family units along St. Joseph Street, allowing for the developer to continue with Phase 2 of the development with the same 15-foot setback allowed in for Phase 1, which was as opposed to the underlying setback of 25 feet. 2, grant no modification to the parking requirements stipulated by the underlying zoning, thus subjecting the developer to minimum parking requirements based on the use of the constructed units, i.e. 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit for multifamily uses, duplexes, or apartment-style structures, and 2 parking spaces for single-family units up to 3 bedrooms, with each additional bedroom requiring a corresponding parking space. And 3rd, require the developer to survey, legally describe, and dedicate the indicated open space in both Phase 1 and this proposed Phase 2 development's open space with legally defined and recorded conservation easements to prevent future expansions into formerly presumed open space as potential sites for relocated units. So that's what came from the Planning Commission, and that's what is before the City Councils tonight for the adoption.
Okay. Very good. We're at the public hearing portion, so if anyone from the public would like to comment on this item, come on up. You'll state your name and address, please, and you'll have up to 5 minutes.
Did you get a chance to see my photos? No? Okay, well, I just go ahead then. Dan Agnello, 964 Everett Parkway. I'd like the council and the staff to consider 4 more conditions on Everett Parkway. There's no elevations shown on the drawings in Phase 1. And I'm asking that the elevation shall be the same as what we have on Phase 1, lots 1 to 16. In other words, no higher than 26 feet. In the email I sent you, you can see the 2-story building. One of the highest houses we have now in lots 1 to 16 is only 26 feet. The proposed townhomes on Overton are only 29 feet. So I'm recommending that you make a condition that the height of the new houses on Phase 2 only be 26 feet. Also, I'd like you to modify your parking recommendation to say that also the duplexes, there's nothing to stop the duplexes from having 4 bedrooms, and right now it says you only have to have 2 parking spaces. They only have a 1-car garage and a driveway. If they have put 4 bedrooms in there, they're still only going to get away with 2 parking spaces. So I recommend that you have the same rule for the duplexes as you do for the single family. Anything more than 3 bedrooms, you have to have additional parking spaces. Also, for the recorded conservation easements and clarification number 3, I would ask that Phase 1 and Phase 2 spaces be considered separately, and that Phase 2 not take credit for using some of the Phase 1 open space. And there was a recommendation that said you may be able to do that, and the remarks thing, but it's supposed to be held separately. Also, the site plan was not complete. The site plan has to be updated to agree with the dimensions of the yard, setbacks, locations, heights, size, use, shape of all the buildings and structures, the lot areas, etc. Also, and our ordinance 1404, paragraph 6, it says that the site plan submissions shall have dwellings that be compatible with the existing or planned in the area. The Trailside Phase 2 comments on the Planning Commission of 9/4/21 state that these dwellings are expected to be consistent and comparative with the surrounding area. The PC had no unit sizes or elevations, yet they approved the PUD amendment without building sizes, or height restrictions. In Matt O'Connor's 9/15/20 letter to Brad, he indicated that the future homes will be similar to the size, dimension, and style of the homes being constructed in the Phase 1 development. This is for the 4 houses on Elkenberg. They weren't even close. By any stretch of the imagination, they're farther from the truth. Those buildings are 39 feet high. So what they did is they told the Planning Commission, we're going to have the same size buildings, 1-story, 2-story, from Phase 1. Then they knew when they went to the plan review that they could get away with it because there's a disconnect between the plan review and the Planning Commission, okay? So, and the builder told me the same thing. Developer last fall, one of the other developers said, oh, I'm going to take that berm across the street from you, make it larger, so we can have a 2.5, 3-story building like they did on Elkenberg. So that's what I'm saying. We got to stop this elevation thing. There are no other buildings that big in our development. And also, with regard to the setbacks, the drawings show that you can have 11 houses on St. Joe, but they don't have a 50-foot wide building. The Planning Commission did not give them any variance for the 66-foot lot. So the site plan is wrong there, and the site plan is wrong across from me on the other side of Everett because there's no dimensions whatsoever on those lots. So that site plan has to be completely redone. Also, the storm drainage calculations were done in July. The revised first submission of the site plan was in October, or in September, thank you. So the drainage calculations also have to be revised. So as a condition of approving these changes and waivers, I ask the council to consider deems necessary for the protection of the public health, safety, and welfare in lieu of the regulations. Unless these changes are made, specifically requested and approved by this council, the site plan or subdivision plan shall comply with the requirements of the ordinance. What I'm saying is it's time for us to consider the residents first and not the developers. And I'd like to also make this my email that I sent to all of you part of the public record. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Kate, anything of that? Like I know storm drain, wasn't that our city engineers have gone through the storm drain calculations?
That's correct. Now, it also says in one of the clauses 3 that I read earlier that the city engineer, city fire department, and other approving agencies have to be complied with. And I did reconfirm with the city engineer that he did look at this plan and that he has reviewed it, even the most recent one, and that he has no issues with the stormwater, and he's had those calculations. I understand Mr. Agnell is concerned about the 4 houses on Elkenberg. Mr. Dopp, our city engineer, has already factored those in.
Okay, understand that. The height issue, I mean, we're not allowing any variation from our current code. I mean, you have that average grade calculation, so you could have a taller in the back, I mean, but they still has, we can't build 4 and 5-story. I mean, it's
It's an average grade,
requirement.
right, so it takes it from the average grade, and not all lots are completely level crossed. And the 4 lots that were next to Elkenberg, they had been already kind of built upon, so the average grade when they went out there was different than maybe across the street. I understand that Mr. Agnell is maybe not understanding that. I do know that our building inspector did go over that with him Nick is here and we can talk about average grade, but it is defined in our zoning ordinance, is how the measurement is taken for height restrictions and height, meeting the height.
Right, and allowed. I mean, we're not granting an exception, it's allowed currently. We just-
Right,
I mean,
it's allowed. I mean, you have to figure out that not all property is completely flat. You have to learn we have to take measurements around and figure out the average grade, and that's where, because we've measured lots of houses in the city where many people are concerned that, this house looks taller than my house, but
Right.
when we have to look at the average grade on the lot being built upon.
and it always is trickier when you're first, we built ours, it was the same thing, because it was, until the landscaping goes in and stuff starts to grow, it looks a little out of skew sometimes. Any other comments, or other things? The site plan review, the site plan being complete comment. I feel like we've been through that a few times.
Well, if the council agrees with these conditions, a lot of these will be sorted out with the surveying, the legal descriptions, and things like that, which will have to be turned into the building department, as well as the engineering department for any new housing units.
Right. I mean,
So they have to get an address. That's how we get these from.
Okay, sounds good. Just wanted to kind of clarify as we go along. Any other public comments on this one?
Mary Hasley, 726 North Shore Drive. I am very concerned. It appears you have missed the issue that Dan has tried to make. I've tried to make, and I would like acknowledgement that you received my email today for incorporation. Thank you. The issue isn't that there's an average grade. The issue is that developers are manipulating the average grade by changing the berm. We cannot have that. You need to look at what it is with regard to the current topography. And they can't add a 3 to 4 foot berm in order to have a walkout 3-story house. That just completely destroys that neighborhood, like what has happened along Elkenberg. And what happened along Elkenberg is because of the shortcuts that this city council and the planning commission have allowed to happen. What happened is that the site plan is not complete. The height requirements that are to be provided for the buildings were not provided. In fact, the staff report in November 2020 said that the size of the structures has not been proposed. It is assumed that the proposed structures would be similar to those proposed and approved in the development. As Dan has already said, those structures approved in the development are significantly shorter than what those monstrosities on Elkenberg are going up. With regard to the current PUD, this continues. The site plan fails to provide height of the structures, and that is required. You cannot assume what is going to be there. The citizens of South Haven deserve compliance with the zoning ordinance, and the review of the PUD requires dimensions, and that it's time and time and time again ignored. It's time that our neighborhoods are protected, that the site review includes dimensions of the buildings that are to be constructed, and that we can understand what is going to happen to our neighborhood. We are tired of having these huge hotels erected and cutting off our neighborhoods. And with regard to public input, the site plan that went at the October hearing, at which we were denied because the attorney said the notice had already been gone out. Well, that notice went out in June, and the site plan changed. In fact, the site plan was not even available at the July meeting. The July meeting did not occur. It was postponed until August, when the first site plan came out. And then at the October site plan, there were comments, and at the September at a subsequent site plan, I'm getting the dates, it was changed from single to duplexes because duplexes have already been allowed. However, when duplexes were allowed in 2006, there was no STR. Allowing duplexes at this time with no conditions for the safety, welfare, and health of our environment, our community, is causing STRs to exponentially increase in that area, prevent having affordable and varied price-fixed homes in that area, because there's an incentive for STRs, because our own ordinances exclude this PUD from the cap. And so without other conditions to ensure that the original intent of this PUD is met, you are not complying with these agreements with our ordinances, because without the site dimensions of the buildings, we are going to have more hotels, and that is not what is supposed to happen. We are prevented from providing comment, and I would really like to know, and I'm sure the attorney-client privilege has been raised because we were already told public comment was not needed, but I would like to know if the city attorney was informed that the site plan had changed from single-family to duplexes, and nothing, we had never been given an opportunity to comment on that at that hearing. We were shut down. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Seeing none? Close public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. Second.
All right, we have a motion second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It is closed. Next, let's talk about this. Next, we'll be asked to consider the approval of the proposed amendment to the Everett Park Phase 2 PUD in accordance with the conditions and clarifications as just read, recommended by the Planning Commission, specifically conditions 1 through 7 from 11/4/2021 and clarifications 1 through 3 from 12/2/2021. Need a motion if there's interest.
I make a motion that we approve the proposed amendment to Everett Park Phase 2 PUD in accordance with the condition and clarifications recommended by the Planning Commission, specifically conditions 1 through 7 from 11/4/2021 and clarifications 1 through 3, 12/2/21.
I'll second.
All right, we've got a motion, we've got a second. Kate, you've heard some of the concerns. I've read what the Planning Commission gave us, and I felt it was pretty complete. Can you talk to us a little bit about just this, kind of some of the concerns about the lot building sizes and how that comes through the PUD process over time?
Well, the underlying zoning is still in effect if that has not been modified by a waiver. So if I'm correct, and Nick can help me out here, they're still under the same height requirements as the underlying zoning. They're under the same kind of requirements for setback, unless, as you just heard in one of the recommendations, to change that setback to mirror the other setbacks and the development. So everything else is in there is with the underlying zoning.
Okay.
That's correct. And my understanding is the way this PUD was done, the Planning Commission approved building envelopes without approving the specific design of homes, which I think is pretty common for these residential PUDs. The design of homes comes later in the process when the applicant applies for a building permit. At that time, it's reviewed and for compliance with all zoning requirements, height, and things like that.
Okay.
There's no plans for individual homes in the PUD itself. That part comes later.
Comes later, exactly. Questions? Mr. Slot, good evening.
Some of the comments that were made, and Kate just specifying the underlying zoning is intact. Would you like to respond with some of what I'll call accusations of not doing our due diligence or anything like that that were made, as far as the building sizes and
Or the postings of meetings and,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm a little concerned about the comment that was made about not allowing the public input and with a certain drawing that was presented at one time and then changed, and then not allowing public input after that.
Okay.
if I'm understanding this all correctly.
Right. There is a kind of lengthy procedural history here, and I was not at all of the meetings of the Planning Commission where this item was discussed. Griffin might actually be able to speak to the timeline a little bit better than me. But my understanding is that this PUD amendment was first brought to the Planning Commission sometime in one of the meetings in the late summer. Do you know which specific meeting?
Yeah, so this public hearing was originally noticed in July. If my recollection serves me right, at that point there were some concerns about the application not being complete, so it not being appropriate to essentially move forward with a vote after that public hearing. At that time, the Planning Commission, I think with the recommendation of city staff and the city attorney, recommended to the Planning Commission to postpone or hold open that public hearing to provide the public additional opportunity to comment. My understanding is that public hearing was held open through the July meeting, the August meeting. I don't believe it was on the agenda on the September meeting, and then also held open through the October meeting. So there would have then been 3 opportunities to comment during the appropriately noticed public hearing. Now, some of the accusations about a lack of notice, I mean, it's correct that that public hearing was not re-noticed for all 3 of those meetings because it was one public hearing held open 3 times or through those 3 meetings. So there was no requirement to re-notice it. If anything, my understanding is the Planning Commission held it open because there were concerns that there was an appropriate amount of time to comment. So really there was more opportunity to comment on this item than there are in a lot of other cases. I think where there's also some concern is that following the closure of the public hearing in October and after some feedback was shared with the from the Planning Commission to the developer, the Planning Commission the developer essentially incorporated some of the feedback the Planning Commission gave them, as is common, and made some changes to their plan that was brought back to the Planning Commission in November and voted on by the Planning Commission for recommendation to you all. There have also, we're also hearing that there's concern that there was an opportunity to comment on that plan. I mean, there was an additional public hearing tonight to comment on that plan to you all, as well as an opportunity for public comment at the City Council meeting 2 weeks ago. So I think I would take the position that there has been ample opportunity for the public to comment on this plan.
The only thing I'd add to that is that there was also an additional opportunity to comment at the November Planning Commission meeting because of some ambiguities in the Planning Commission approval. The item was brought back.
December.
I apologize. It was originally approved in November. That was the meeting where public comment was not taken on this specific item because the public hearing had been closed at a prior meeting. When the item came back in December for clarification, there was additional public comment. Not a public hearing, but just public comment taken on the item at that time. And so we've had 3 opportunities for public comment since the meeting where the complaint about it not being held originated, being the November meeting.
And then the other question I have is can you remind me why this PUD was excluded from the rental cap?
This PUD, along with 3 others, were exempted out of the max cap for permits. Part of the reason is because we were the idea was to spur development in these 3, and pardon the jargon, but 3 failed developments that were not getting a lot of building permits at that time. In 2016, when the rental registration ordinance was enacted, and then 2018, when the rental inspection, the business and personal units went into effect. Going back, the Preserve, I believe it was Maplegate, Trail, I think it's Trailside, but Everett Park, as well as Sherman Hills were the 4 PUDs that were not part of the cap. They are still counted as units, business units or personal units that are still counted, but they do not factor in the cap that was set to apply to business units in the residential neighborhoods.
My memory is partially, at least with some of those 4, and perhaps with all 4, that they were approved kind of with the understanding that there would be short-term rentals within them, but the units hadn't been developed yet, so they wouldn't have had been kind of grandfathered under the ordinance. So the idea was to kind of grandfather them in the sense that they would be allowed to be developed as they originally approved by the Planning Commission.
As development, excuse me, as development had stalled and you were not seeing the amount of buildings or building permits being drawn for those areas within those PUDs, that was a way to allow for, I guess, maybe a development to occur in those areas, whereas it was not occurring at that time.
And even though they're not under the cap, they would still have to abide by short-term rental
Absolutely.
ordinances.
Yes, they do.
And then with that in mind, because that brings me to one of Mr. Agnello's questions about parking spaces. So duplexes, if they have additional bedrooms, wouldn't they, under short-term rental, be required to have more parking? Or no?
No,
Or am I not remembering?
in regard to short-term rentals and required parking, the underlying zoning applies.
Okay. Okay.
Now, there is a provision where, in the short-term rental ordinance, where people are looking for an opportunity to exceed the maximum occupancy, providing additional parking spaces is one of the things that can be considered when an application like that may be made. So, there is some language in the short-term rental ordinance that speaks to providing additional parking. But when it comes to what's the required amount of parking, it's the underlying zoning.
Okay. One additional one I had, and just for probably just my personal clarification, Mr. Agnello also brought up the case that in here, but I don't want to have it elsewhere. If developers and builders are manipulating berms to get a variance or to get some additional height out of a building, they're still capped at 2.5 stories. 2.5 stories, 45 feet.
That's correct.
Is
That's in
the
the underlying
zoning
zoning.
ordinance. So you can move berms around, but they can't go higher than 45 feet.
Right. The 4 houses that were out there that were built earlier, I think that they didn't realize there was a berm on that as part of that detention pond. That area was, I guess, already built up. So for them to, I guess I'm having a hard time trying to figure out what the average grade was because that area was already kind of manipulated. To go back, we'd have to go back in my mind prior to 2006 to find out what that would have been. So I know that there was it has been manipulated as part of the first phase PUD. Now, we have an ordinance that explains how average grade is calculated, and the building inspector has been very diligent about making sure that that new houses have been coming in under that, and we've seen that enforced around the city. So in my mind, I think that's been well addressed.
Okay. So it's not a loophole that someone discovered and they're still, okay.
Right.
Anybody else? Questions, comments? No? Okay. All right, we've got a motion and a second to approve the proposed amendment to Everett Park Phase 2 PUD. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no.
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 That was 4-2. Okay. It'll pass. Next one. Item 10. City Council will be asked to consider the following actions regarding the proposed rezoning of parcels listed on page 113 in the agenda packet. First, again, we're going to hold a public hearing.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing. Second.
Motion second to hold a public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It is opened up. All right, Kate. Oh, this is the rezoning. We had a couple things regarding this one. So rezoning first.
That's correct. So as the council will remember, we have completed a 425 agreement with the South Haven Charter Township to take certain parcels into the city for a period of 10 years from the area of Aylworth down to Blue Star Highway. And the reason why we're taking those in to, 1, help spur this area to make a better entry point into the city. 2, there are some lots in there that they need a little extra help with code enforcement. And 2, we can extend the commercial rehab district, which is, I think, item 11, so the next item down. So we're going to be applying our economic development tools as well as our code enforcement practices here in the city to help renovate and get some new cleanup in that area and spur some development. Griffin has been working on this. We have a map in the packet showing which lots have been brought into the city and how they're going to be rezoned. For the majority, these will be rezoned as B12, which is general business. There are 2 lots that will be rezoned as light industrial because they are adjacent to the W.R. Grace Chemical Company. Griffin, anything to add?
The only thing I would add is the recommendations from staff that were then moved forward, approved, and recommended to you all by the Planning Commission were based on the future land use map that's contemplated in the adopted master plan.
Could you guys just maybe briefly share kind of the discussions we've had with the township, just as far as, and we've had a few questions, I know an email that came through today, just as far as the township's process, not that we know exactly what the township did as far as noticing, but just as far as how we've had discussions with them about cleaning up this area, and they've approached us about, obviously we have tools available such as the commercial rehab district to spur along some improvements, provide some incentives.
Sure. My understanding is this concept of a M140 economic development plan, if you will, has been in conversations for several years. Since I arrived with the city, just short of a year ago, this has been something that's been contemplated for some time and really just needed to get implemented and moved forward, hence the 425 agreement and some of these actions. As Kate mentioned, my understanding is the township and the city recognize that this is a major entry point into both of our communities or our community, and there's a lot of economic development potential in that area, both in terms of undeveloped property, underutilized property, or property that could really just use some rehabilitation or reinvestment. So the city has some tools at its disposal that the township doesn't necessarily have. One of those being we have a more robust building department, planning and zoning team, code enforcement staff, and such that can use some of the sticks, if you will, within our ordinance to help to incentivize some property maintenance in that area. And we also have economic development tools such as commercial rehab districts that can be carrots, if you will, to try to really incentivize some reinvestment and business growth in that area. So my understanding is this is a temporary agreement. It's for a period of 10 years, which is shorter than many other 425s I've worked with, because the understanding is this is not meant to be forever. This is meant to be a relatively short-term partnership where the city is going to help to really clean up and revamp that area, and then have those parcels transfer back to the township with the understanding of, at the end of the day, that's beneficial for our community as a whole.
I'd further add that we've talked with the township leadership and had a pretty robust conversation over, obviously, over my transition period into this role, and before that, as to which lots would be appropriate to come into this agreement area. So we've revised the map a couple of times based on what the township was willing to transfer over to the city. So this was very much a mutually drafted agreement here to do the 425. As the 425 has been completed both on the township end and now the city's end, and what the city has to do now is rezone those lots because they do have to have a zoning designation within the city. So that's what the city council is being asked to do here tonight. We do not have a one-for-one parity with the township zoning, so we went with general business for the lots that we've itemized out here in the packet, as that's the best, that's most conforming to not only our future land use, but does share some things with the township with commercial, but it's not exactly the same.
Okay, sounds good. All right, we're at the public hearing portion, so I know it looks like we have some folks here to discuss it. So if you'd like to discuss this item, just come on up, state your name, address, and you'll have up to 5 minutes to address the city council. Good evening.
My name's Bart Bales. My address is 2 Chestnut. My comments are regarding the property I own at 8960 M140, formerly the pizza place on the edge of town, about 4 acres. Going back to just a couple quick points here. I'm going to start out with the timely notices. I first read about this end of October, first part of November in the paper. Thought it was a great idea. Haven't heard a word from it since until I received a letter right after Thanksgiving. And my only comment on this is, as a developer, I develop in Indiana, and I've done a little bit up here in Michigan. Planning on moving up here full-time here real soon. Own a house up here now. Own several vacation homes also. As a developer, I've found most of the time, if we work as partners, everybody wins. Decisions being made at the bench and then proposed on us developers. I mean, you guys really don't even know what I have in plans for that parcel. I think it's a benefit to this town. If we work as partners, our town wins. If it doesn't, we just battle, nobody wins. That's my first point. Second point is the info on making this decision has a lot to do with a lot of people up and down that corridor. I bought that piece of property a year or so ago. I've done a lot of just facial improvements because the place was terrible when I first bought it. There's a lot of questions that I have about this program that I need to feel comfortable about before I even, voice my opinion for it or fight against it. Taxes. We talk about abatements, tax abatements possible. Do I even know? I know what I pay in property taxes now in a township. Do I know what my tax rate is going to be for that piece of parcel when it's being pulled into the city? It's important information for a developer to have. I don't even know that. The grant money that is proposed for this strip, I mean, what is that going to be used for? I mean, are we going to get curbs, sidewalks, driveway approaches? What part of the city, what is your part of this project that you want me to develop the land? What are you guys going to do? I don't know that either. Where's this grant money going? It's not coming directly to me. Another point is I don't even know what my responsibility as that landowner will be. What the code enforcements, I know I'm a firm believer in code enforcement, but I don't know what you guys are planning for that corridor. So you guys are making decisions on land that we have invested our money, not government money, and we don't even know what's going to happen. What are you going to recommend? What are you going to demand? And that goes back to my first point about being open from the beginning, off the record, on the record, but sit down with us landowners that want to beautify and help this community, not just tell us what we have to do. And tonight is the first night I heard about the 2 lots being changed to industrial. Do we know if my lot is one of those?
I don't know which lot's yours, quite honestly.
Yeah, I can show you about
Your
the
lot
map
is
right
your
here.
lot is not one of those.
Where is it joining to my lot?
And we're down to 1 minute. just so you know.
South.
Got about a minute.
South?
The two parcels that are being proposed to be light industrial are the 2 parcels south of the W.R. Grace entryway. All
Okay.
of the others are being proposed to be B2 general commercial.
Okay. And then my last comment, I know we've heard about carrots and sticks, but in all my experience of development and building, I know carrots are awful followed by sticks. So I appreciate all the carrots, but I don't even know what the carrots are. But I know what sticks are. So I'd just like this board to be more open going forward. We're all in this together.
Yep,
So
sounds good.
if you want our blessing on this development, let's work together.
Will do, thank you. Griffin, could you, Mayor, between Kate and Griffin, just explain our kind of process on getting mailings out regarding that commercial rehab district? We can share a little bit on what we've done so far, and we've used it effectively, but just thoughts on that communication?
Sure. So for a little bit of background, I mean, there were some courtesy notices sent to existing businesses back in June with quite a bit of information in terms of 425 agreements and what they can do, what they've been used for in the past, commercial rehab districts, commercial rehab abatements, and so on and so forth. And then when the process started to actually move formally, there was a public hearing for the 425 agreement, which was noticed as outlined in statute. There was then a rezoning process that went before the Planning Commission and is now before you all, as well as a commercial rehab, or excuse me, yes, a commercial rehab district process that has been before you all for several meetings. So in terms of public notices, there have been mailings involved in some of those processes as appropriate. There's been newspaper notices regarding some of those processes as appropriate, as well as, you know, a number of opportunities to comment at the Planning Commission and or City Council level. I've also had conversations over the phone with several people who have reached out in that district to try to explain some of the opportunities that are going to be available. At the end of the day, all I can say, though, is it's still private property owners. They're the ones who are going to be the ones, you know, pursuing projects or not pursuing projects. I mean, the city doesn't do projects for private property owners. I think what staff's just trying to do is create an environment that is as conducive as possible for development in that area.
And my comment to you would be to come down City Hall, find one of us. We're here every day of the week and have this discussion because we're here to have that talk. So I'll leave it with that. So, very good.
And when we did when we did this for where the Meyer grocery store is, it was so that developers like yourself could just come and deal with one institution, not have to deal with the township and the city. So that's also kind of the goal.
I understand, but I just
One
wanted
stop.
to be clear.
Yep.
That was my only notification. So all the pre-letters
Got it.
that went out never entered.
Did
Okay.
you connect with Kate too this afternoon? Amy called me, Amy O'Sullivan, and I tried to, okay,
I did not talk to Kate.
okay. You got a hold of Amy though? Or
Yes,
got
Amy
a
gave
hold
me a
of you?
call, and I did direct her to the correct zoning. I think there was a confusion as to what district this was being rezoned to.
Okay.
Sounds good. Okay. Anybody else on this topic? Oh, come on up. State your name and address. You have up to 5 minutes.
Thanks. Yeah, my name's Wayne Pacina. I live 259 Brockway Avenue. I purchased my lot at 09160 M140 on June 7th of this year. It's a little half-acre lot immediately north of the Grace Chemical entrance. And I think, to echo something that Mr. Bales said, the biggest concern I have is a lack of timely mailings regarding the rehab district and the 425 plan and the rezoning, especially to the people who are affected. And it's only about 16 properties. I have received none of the mailings at my permanent home address in South Haven. But I got a tax bill from the township, and I got a water bill for my lot. Now, I did get an email back from Mr. Graham today that said the mailings were the responsibility of people at the Van Buren County level. I just think when it's something this important, where you're discussing zoning changes on 15 properties, which isn't a lot of properties, there needs to be better communications to make sure that the people affected by these changes get these notices. I got 0 notices. It wasn't until my wife called Mr. Graham on December 6th, I believe. He and I talked on the 7th. On the 8th, he sent me all the notices, all the way back to June 15th, I believe, when it was first discussed. Maybe a return receipt mailing or something. I know by law you don't have to do that, but it's not a huge community. It's a very important thing for the people that own property here, that have plans. I might also say that one of the items he sent me, the City of South Haven public hearing notice, which was a notice for the December 2nd meeting about the zoning. There's no date on this letter. So saying it went out to anybody on any particular date is, kind of moot point. Secondly, my site plan for storage buildings on my lot was approved by the township earlier this month. I've been told that the plan and use will be honored in the 425 plan under the B2 zoning. What are the assurances of that? Because I've spent about 20 grand in this direction already. And I just want to make sure that we all agree that there's some assurances that my site plan as approved by the township is approved by the city. Thirdly, properties carved out of the plan. I think I know the answer to this, so it's kind of a rhetorical question. Who enforces their codes? I'm all about beautification. I'm planting trees and arborvitaes, and my wife wouldn't let me do it any other way. Will those properties carved out be forced to follow the same guidelines? If they're under the township, I'm thinking not. If not, beautification is moot, because these properties are right next to our properties. Will there be any abatements available on new construction? If so, who decides? Some 425 plans allow abatement on new construction. And as Mr. Bale said, can we get any tax change examples comparing our township taxes to our city taxes? That would be beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I guess I'll just quickly comment. Kate Griffin, jump in. I would just say the same thing as far as just coming down to City Hall and walking through those questions with staff, specifically regarding the work you've put in. I did see that email. I did talk to Kate, and we will, we'll work through that with you. We don't want you to, you've put some time and effort into that. So we have a zoning department. We have people here, Monday through Friday. So find Kate, find Griffin. We'll sit you down with our staff, and we'll figure out what you've done to date, and we'll work through that process with you and answer as many of those questions or all those questions till you're satisfied. So, and I appreciate your coming and doing that. And I think all of us probably stay concerned about these notices. So I think we have some work to do there. I know we're doing it, but just
Yeah, just to speak to that, we don't actually have the addresses to Van Buren County addresses, so South Haven Charter Township, we don't have them in our system. We have to seek those from Van Buren County, so the addresses that we would get from those folks is what we would send out. So if a person hasn't filled, it sounds like you recently purchased that property, if a property transfer affidavit wasn't filed, it'd be hard for us to know who is the owner if one of those affidavits aren't filed. We get the addresses from Van Buren County. So I agree that, making sure that we have the most up-to-date information is going to behooves everyone. So we can always make sure that we're checking and rechecking with Van Buren County when we do something like this going forward.
Perfect.
Mr. Mayor, I also think it's worth clarifying that not all public hearings and not all public notices are the same. there's different requirements for different types of public hearings. There's different noticing requirements for different types of public body actions, and I think that's commonly confused. An example I'll give is, the city issues, for example, in this situation, we issued courtesy informational notices, which there's no legal requirement to who those are to be sent to, when those need to be sent, why they need to be sent. They're strictly informational for courtesy purposes only. For rezonings that involve more than 11 adjacent parcels, mailed notices are not required. During a commercial rehabilitation district, notices are required to be mailed. For example, a public hearing does have to be held to consider a 425 agreement, but mailed notices do not. So I think sometimes there's just confusion as well on this action's being considered, I didn't get a notice. There's being a public hearing, I didn't get a notice. There are absolutely some situations where notices are required, but I think there's confusion on when and that they're not all the same.
Thank you.
And I certainly understand that, but I think both of those gentlemen, their point was we could, as a small town, we could do a better job of, whether we're required to or not, we could do a better job.
Yep.
And Kate said that, but we're going to work on it. Yep.
Own it. Sounds good. We're still in the public hearing. Any other comments from the public?
Mary Hasley, 726 North Shore Drive. I'm just going to reiterate a couple comments because they seem to be recurring. And so if they're getting work done, they're not getting work done sufficiently. So I know way back in June, I believe, or potentially earlier, there was an issue raised about the public notice that people are receiving is not dated. We do not know when it was sent. And it does not seem like it would be a burden to put the date on the letter when it's created for when it's sent. So that date is on the notice, and we know when it was supposedly sent, so that when we get it, especially with COVID and delays in mail, things happen. It's unintentional. There's no inference. It's just stating facts. A date on a letter could resolve a lot of frustration in a town of less than 4,000 people when everybody knows everybody else. The other thing is taxes. That has been an issue, and the gentleman raised a very good issue. What is going to happen to their taxes? I mean, we say people cannot afford to live here because of taxes, and now you're annexing it to give them benefits to improve it, but maybe they don't need the benefits. So that would be nice, and I do not believe that was answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Can I say one more thing?
Actually, not at this time.
Okay, because I
But-
didn't get an answer to
but-
one of my questions.
To my point earlier, just reach out to city staff and they can work through all those issues with you. All right, anybody else? Let's close that public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All right, motion second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It is closed. All right, next. Council may ask to consider the adoption of Ordinance 1076, which is an ordinance to amend the official map of the South Haven zoning ordinance to assign zoning districts to the listed properties conditionally transferred from South Haven Charter Township to the city of South Haven along the M140 highway south of Aylworth Avenue.
I make a motion to consider adoption of ordinance 1076, an ordinance to amend the official map of the South Haven zoning ordinance to assign zoning districts to the listed properties conditionally transferred from South Haven Charter Township to the city of South Haven along the M140 south of Aylworth Avenue.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Staff, anything else you want to add to what we've been discussing? Comments? Got enough in front of us? Council, questions? Mr. Schlock?
How'd you know?
I just got a feeling.
Two questions, or maybe just one comment and one question. One comment would be the taxes. Do they assume the city of South Haven tax rates when this is transferred, is my question. And that should be something that is calculatable by somebody smarter than me at City Hall if these gentlemen come in and ask that.
Yes, we have an assessor who can help figure out what that is for their lot size and what kind of improvements or what's on the lot.
Okay. And then my second question is probably for my own ignorance. Is the South Haven Township paying the city of South Haven anything for our staff time, our attorneys, and anything else for this?
No, they're not.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Nothing? Okay. All right, well, we've been talking about this for a while as far as kind of the point, the thought process. Now, part of what's, as far as staff time captured, that's through, obviously, taxes and whatnot, so it's temporarily annexed in to try to spur along the improvements as discussed, and that's kind of, this has been stalled for decades. I mean, it's been,
This is an entry point that's had, that's needed some work. So I think that this is something that was identified when we were looking at entry points into the city, because you're looking at how to best make an impression on people who are visiting here, people who want to relocate here. And this was an entry point that was identified some time ago.
okay. All right, very good. We've got a motion, we've got a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It is approved. And again, please get a hold of city staff and we can answer all those questions. Next, City Council will be asked to take the following actions regarding the proposed M140 Corridor Commercial Rehabilitation District. Again, we are going to hold a public hearing.
I make a motion to open a public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion to second to open public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It is open. All right, let's talk Commercial Rehab District. Who wants to tell us all about it, what it might mean, and what sort of incentives we might be able to offer?
Go ahead, Griffin.
Sure, thank you very much. So there's been interest in creating a second commercial rehab district along the M140 corridor. Currently, the city has an existing commercial rehab district that was established in 2008 that encompasses much of the central business district as well as south along Broadway and kind of ends right there at the old Michigan State Police outpost in the Max 10. The proposed commercial rehab district before you would pick up where that one ends and continue on through south along M140 all the way to Blue Star Highway. As you all are aware, commercial rehab district, all that does is allow properties, eligible properties within a commercial rehab district to apply to city council for a commercial rehab tax exemption. At that time, city council, on your own authority, gets to consider whether or not to grant that exemption. Those tax exemptions can be good for up to 10 years, which aligns with the 10-year 425 agreement that was established for the sections of properties we discussed earlier.
Sounds good. All right. We've got a motion, we got a second, we got a public hearing that's open. Any questions from the public on this one? Come on up. Just state your name and address. You'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Wayne Pacina, 259 Brockway Avenue. Just, I think I asked this question earlier. In the rehab district, will there be abatements available on new construction? And if so, who decides? Because I know a lot of the 425 plans I read about online, it includes new construction, rehab old buildings, whatnot. And I think the documents I got in the mail just mentioned rehab of buildings, certain age. So that would be the question I have. Who decides and if there's abatements available on new construction? That's it.
Want to fire? Go.
Sure. So city council would ultimately decide if a commercial rehab tax abatement is granted or not. And eligible properties can apply to city council for consideration. Eligible properties, I think Nick's looking up the specific definition right now, but my understanding of eligible properties are where there were commercial facilities that are at least 15 years old. Is that correct, Nick?
That is correct. There is some ability to give a abatement on new construction, but it has to meet certain specifications of the act. And I'm just looking through these as we go here. But let's see, rehabilitation also includes new construction on vacant property from which a previous structure has been demolished. So yes, it looks like at least in some circumstances, there is the ability for an abatement on new construction on a vacant parcel.
Okay.
Can that be up to, you said up to 15 years, so let's say there was.
Up to 10 years.
Up to 10 years, okay. So let's say there was a building there 9 years ago, it was tore down, and now there wants to be a new construction there. Is that something possible?
We'd probably have to take a look on that in that specific situation. So it's tough to say. I mean, in some situations, properties are going to be deemed eligible based on the guidelines, the statute. But in some instances, property isn't eligible and they wouldn't be able to move forward.
Right, so for vacant, it says, can be a qualified facility if within the immediately preceding 15 years was a commercial property. So if there was a commercial use on the property within the past 15 years, is how I read it.
Okay.
Again, this is one of those statutes you have to look closely for each project, so it's important that property owners come in and work with staff so we can make sure that the requirements are met. But in answer to the question, at least in some circumstances, there is an ability to get an abatement for new construction.
And that's how we've handled these situations in the past. So if you all just think to the last year of the few of these that have gone through, the old Max 10 property, Mr. Tom Rummel's Hart Insurance business. I mean, when someone is interested in pursuing this exemption, what they would do is start a conversation with staff, tell us about what their project they're trying to do is. We're then able to look at the specific language in the statute to determine if they are eligible or not to apply. If they're eligible, they can then complete an application that's brought before you all like we have on several occasions, and you all have the sole authority to determine whether or not to grant that abatement.
Okay, that's great. It's very helpful. And again, we'll continue to push out communication to encourage folks to come down and have that conversation. So I think that's take home tonight is let's get that information out so you know to come in and start that conversation. Okay. Any other public questions on this one? Come on. Again, state your name and address.
Art Bales, 2 Chestnut. Question goes back to infrastructure along the corridor there. I mean, are the plans of that rebuilding that corridor, I mean, are there curbs? Are there sidewalks planned? We have developed some parcels here that kind of information is very, very beneficial to us for lot layouts, building layouts, things like that. I mean, is that in the future down that corridor to beautify it instead of having a bunch of long grass retainage ditches on both sides of the road all the way into town?
There haven't been any street improvements for that road. First off, I think that it would be, I think Road Commission would just dictate what can be done there, even though we would be transferring ownership for a period of time. I believe that still stays with the Road Commission, has their right-of-way out there. But no, Mr. Bales, we have not submitted any kind of plans for street or road improvements or
No
landscaping.
lighting, anything like that?
At this time, no.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. How about let's close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, that's closed. And next, we'll be asked to consider the adoption of Resolution 2021-31, which is a resolution to establish the M140 Corridor Commercial Rehabilitation District.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2021-31, a resolution to establish the M140 Corridor Commercial Rehabilitation District.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any other council comments, questions? Nothing. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It is approved. And again, thanks for your questions on this, and please come down and talk to staff. Please, please, please. Next, new business. City Council will be asked to consider an introduction of a proposed beach and pier barrier ordinance. Just need a motion.
Make a motion to introduce the proposed beach and pier barrier ordinance.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. This is an extremely important topic. And I know we have some players in the room that have been involved in the process, and I appreciate everyone's involvement to date. So who would like to take this baton and run?
Well, thank you, Mayor. So this is stemming out of, well, some of the work that City Council has done. Chris Campbell served on our Beach Ad Hoc Committee. I do see a couple members from the Beach Ad Hoc Committee who are here today. So this is coming out of the review of our beach and pier safety. There was also a land use order by the DNR looking at ticketing people who are going into the waters when it's unsafe. So these recommendations came forward, so we brought these to the City Council during this summer. Council is generally receptive and would like to see and directed staff to kind of work on this ordinance. So before you is the draft ordinance. There are some questions we're going to need council to kind of give some direction. One of those being the fines. Right now, we have it defaulting to the standard fine, but we could go as high as, I think, $1,000 for the fireworks. But I also have Attorney Nick Curcio here if we have any questions about liability and why would we have a pier barrier now. Also, what can you still do if you would like to be a kiteboarder or do some kind of surfboarding? So we want to kind of walk through what's in the ordinance and what's not in the ordinance. What is in the ordinance is that there are certain times when the water is not safe for anybody, and those would be days when we have like an E. coli testing from the health department. That means that it's shut down. That's not good for, so that means nobody is able to use the water, even those kiteboarders, right? But there are going to be times when the waves are of such a height that it's not good for general swimmers, but for people who have safety harnesses and those boards, those might be at appropriate times for those folks. And so in the ordinance, it talks about those kind of beach mechanisms. We also have in here a model of a pier barrier that was modeled after Holland State Park, which would be like a blue safety barrier, similar to the blue safety fences that are out there right now. That using a similar standard that's in the state law, that every 1/3 wave, the South Haven city manager, Shays director, the harbor master, or the police chief could shut down the beach and or the pier because of unsafe conditions. So with that being said, does council have any questions, or was there anything that staff can help illuminate for you?
I've got a few, but I will defer if, would you like to start first?
My simple one, maybe I'm just reading, the way it reads, a proposed beach and pier barrier ordinance. So we're going to have a barrier for the beaches, or that, I'm just reading that awkwardly?
Oh, you mean from the staff report?
Yeah, well, new business, city council will consider introduction of a proposed beach and pier barrier.
Yes, that was my bad attempt at English, but no.
Maybe I'm just reading
Beach
it
safety and
awkwardly.
pier barrier.
We're not going to try to put
ordinance,
gates
or
around the
that.
beaches.
No, we are not
Okay.
putting
We're thinking
gates
more of the
around the
piers.
beach.
I think maybe it was because the beach could be closed and you're maybe changing the authority of who to do so.
Right, there won't be an actual barrier on the beach, but the beach could be closed with a red flag. And if a red flag is out there, that means that, barring certain reasons, you could be ticketed for entering the water. That's what's in this proposed ordinance.
Okay, then I guess my legitimate question is, I know that 8-9 years ago, there were gates on the pier, and then the city took them down because of liability reasons. Has anything changed? If we're putting the gates back up there, are we then suddenly responsible and liable? And I think the gates are important, and saving lives are very important, but I also don't want to open us up to a whole hornet's nest of trouble. And
they
I
haven't been
guess,
up
I guess
for-
we're all kind of working, and we were to look at Nick.
Yeah, it's been decades. They haven't been up for at least 27 years.
I got an email and it suggested 8, but I was thinking 10.
I've been here 27. They haven't been here since I've been here.
Okay.
So I know they were before I got here.
I've been with the city about 10 years. I'm fairly certain it was before that. And what I have heard is that it was, they were removed during the pendency of the City versus Koenig lawsuit, which I believe that drowning occurred in 1990, and the case wasn't resolved at the Supreme Court level until 1997. What I had heard is that they were removed sometime kind of while the case was pending. The city ultimately prevailed in that lawsuit. It's kind of a strange suit, and it was largely a breach of contract action against the city because the city had a contract with the Coast Guard that's kind of spelled out, I know with the Army Corps of Engineers, spelled out when the gates were going to be closed and not closed. And pursuant to that agreement, they were supposed to be closed when the drowning occurred, and that was kind of the basis for the lawsuit. The Supreme Court said that basically the public wasn't a beneficiary of that contract and couldn't sue for breach of its terms. Only the Coast Guard could sue. So the city won that lawsuit. There was also a gross negligence claim in that lawsuit that a jury found the city not to be grossly negligent. That would be because the contract issue is kind of a weird one. If there's any liability, it would be under gross negligence theory. But that would be a very high standard to meet. As Kate mentioned, there's a state statute that specifically gives the city manager the authority but not the obligation to close pier barriers when there's a certain wave magnitude. I think it's when 1/3 of the waves cause the pier to be awash. So under that statute, as I read it, it's a discretionary decision. It doesn't create a duty for the city to close the barriers. It would just give us the option of doing so. And then what the ordinance would do is if the city exercised its discretion to close the barriers, it would then be a violation of the ordinance for someone to hop over the barrier. So from my perspective, there's always a chance when you do anything or don't do something that a plaintiff could argue that it's gross negligence, but it's a very high bar to overcome. And in the case, back from the 1990s, the plaintiff ultimately didn't overcome it, and I believe that is the case that prompted the decision to remove the barriers. And that decision may have been made before the case even was determined by the Supreme Court. I'm not sure about that part. That's obviously way before my time, but we've been trying to piece together the timeline, and that seemed like it could possibly have been the case.
And I think that Holland has added gates, and so maybe something had changed. Maybe there was.
They have, and we modeled these proposed gates on that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, so you have your blue safety fence that is maintained by the Corps. They painted that lovely safety blue color. And so what we would be doing is mirroring the same style and going over. Of course, our piers are much wider than Holland, so we are looking at a wider gate at both north and south. And we do have those examples in the packet.
Mm-hmm. And who has to make that call when the storms are bad and?
There's 4 people who can make that call. Okay. Obviously, I want to be at least the person in the know, so you all know.
Yeah.
But yes, there's up to 4 people. The police chief, the Shays director, the harbor master, or the city manager can make that call.
Okay.
Obviously, if inclement weather is coming at 2 o'clock in the morning, we want to make sure those barricades, if we believe that it's sufficient enough, want to be down. But again, I think we're trying to do the best from what we're learning about pier barricades, and of course, making sure that people have the understanding about when is it not the optimum time to be out on one of those structures, because they're not meant for pedestrians. They're navigational structures, but of course, they're used and enjoyed by many people, thousands of people every year.
With the barriers, I would recommend us putting it obviously looks like maybe a closed sign, but to put the fine that would be related to people jumping over the gates. Because I don't think, if you're not allowed, okay, well, that's not going to stop people, but when there's a price tag to it, it usually will.
Right. And so I am looking for recommendation from this board, this council to tell me what I guess price tag you would like to put on that. We have a range of opportunities of what that price tag would be. Also, this is listed as a civil infraction, so it does not have to be issued by just a police officer. This could be a code enforcement officer who can issue a civil infraction.
And you said up to $1,000 is an option? I would argue
I believe so.
I would argue as high as we can go. I don't think we want people to drown, so let's make it clear. Stay off. Get out of the water, stay off the piers. red is a serious flag, and when we close that, it's closed. So that would be my goal, would be to make it,
I was wondering, do we delineate between someone caught on a closed gate versus someone we have to fish out of the water? But
yeah.
hearing you say that, as high as it goes, it's more of a deterrent. then yeah.
don't want people out there. I don't know
Yep.
how else to make it
Yep.
clear.
Yep.
Makes sense to me.
So if that helps. I don't know if you need that in the motion, but I guess we're just introducing, so.
Sure. I'll work with Attorney Curcio, and we'll get that change made for when we bring it back at the next meeting.
I've just got one. I know I talked to you about this, but I understand we have a group of 4 folks that have to make that decision. My concern was nighttime and the fact that we're not going to, is it just shut down at nighttime, to which the concern was just shutting it down would be, it may not be shut down every night at dark or whatever, but just some procedure, because again, storm comes up overnight and for some strange reason, someone's out on the pier. It's just kind of an automatic, there might be a storm, they're just shut. I don't need that answer now, but just some sort of a procedure to make sure, because storms happen at night, and just want to make sure we're covered.
And they'd have to walk all the way out to the other end of the lighthouses, wouldn't they? Confirm that nobody's on the pier when they close it at night.
Right. The idea is coming up with a procedure internally on how we were going to make that happen, and of course, what are the notifications. The good thing is we have a really good Nixle program that kind of helps us get the word out to a lot of people who are signed up. So again, just setting up those internal processes on what council decides to do legislatively, and then we effectuate.
Any other thoughts, comments?
Quick question. So the language regarding the exceptions for when a person can be in the water for wave height includes surfing, including longboards, shortboards, kiteboarding, boogie boards with swim fins, and skimboarding. And I'm just wondering, is that language, did we get that from somewhere, like because doesn't the state do something similar?
Yes. The state DNR just issued what they call a land order that is closing, the state is going to start closing their beaches for inclement weather for the first time in years. And they had a pretty significant public input process, and based on that input, carved out these exact exceptions to their rule. Essentially, as I understand it, these activities can't be done unless there's high winds, kiteboarding in particular. So there was kind of a strong push from enthusiasts of those sports to have this exemption, and this language comes verbatim from the state land order.
Thank you.
Mr. Campbell, are you good with that language?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I know that.
This was your idea, I think.
Yeah, he's one of those people.
A lot of surfers got together with the DNR through this whole process. Actually, the DNR reached out to them as well, and they spent a long time working this through, so.
Good. Well, that's good. Anybody else here questions? If not, we can get some public council comment, public comment. Sure. Any public comments on this right now? Anybody here from the public want to comment? Mr. Gruber, good evening. And thanks for coming for your photo tonight. We appreciate it.
That's okay. I am a professional.
Absolutely. Oh, sorry, a name and address too, of course.
Clark Gruber, 525 Superior Street. I appreciate all the work that the committee put into beach safety. I'm so old, I actually remember lifeguards back in the day. And I also appreciate the history that Nick was able to bring. I'm all for the ordinance of coming up with some way of closing the water. The pier part of it is the issue that I'm still struggling with because I do remember the lawsuits going all the way to the Supreme Court, and I just feel like putting the responsibility on, was 8 feet the right number? Was it 7.5 when we ran out there? Did someone climb over? Do we have a big enough barrier? There's just so many things that could happen with the responsibility of closing the pier. And I know that Holland had a really nice example and that's, I think, the state park. So when I look at liability, I would look at the entire state of Michigan being in that lawsuit. I'm just wondering whether we're successful or not, and if a suit were to happen, with Shays being involved, would liability then be spread out over the other municipalities as well? So, it's just a big decision to be made, and it would be great in the perfect world that we could put that up. I just feel like that's the one piece, the barrier side of it, that is just going to be more of a struggle from the liability standpoint, on top of the city. And that's kind of my only comment. Otherwise, I think having some teeth in closing and having the carve out for the sports enthusiasts who, are taking a risk just in their sport to begin with, understand that that kind of weather is actually what they need for propulsion. And, if you've ever seen a man in a wetsuit, that's kind of scary to begin with. So those are all my comments, and I appreciate all your work.
Well stated. Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anybody else? Good evening, Cam. Another hard worker on this topic.
Yeah, for a long time.
We
You're going to
appreciate
get
that.
super tired of seeing my face all the time.
We
I think,
appreciate your
about
work,
this.
so thank you.
Cam Doherty, 522 Edgell Street. I appreciate the city circling back to this and looking at the proposals we made during the first half of the year from the Beach Safety Committee. I'm also pleased to see renewed emphasis being placed on pier gates and actively keeping swimmers out of the water when conditions are dangerous. We just had that scare the other day. Steve was at a swim banquet when a whole bunch of parents who happened to be first responders had to bolt out of there, and that was a scary situation that honestly I think gates could have prevented. As I was going through the current draft, there were just a couple of points that I just wanted to draw people's attention to that I think are worth considering. There may be times when the pier can be open even though the lake should be closed to swimmers and vice versa. I'm of the opinion that should probably be spelled out in this ordinance. It appears that body surfers, I think the language says body/boogie boarders. There's a difference between body surfers and boogie boarders. I think that distinction should be made because by way of the sport itself, body surfers would not have a flotation device out there with them. So totally understand boogie boarders being carved out, but it doesn't make sense to me that we would allow body surfers out there. Any teenager who wanted to be out there in those dangerous conditions could just say they were body surfing. This draft of the ordinance also specifically states that closure to swimmers will be driven by the National Weather Service and/or wave height. Just like the changing of the flag should be driven by trained local eyes on the water, so should beach closure. We need to continue to remember that wave height is not the lone indicator of whether or not our waterways are safe for swimming that day. And the last point I wanted to bring to everybody's attention is one I keep hammering on is enforcement. Pier closure will be simple as closing the gate and monitoring it. The beach closure, on the other hand, will not be so simple, especially if only a portion of the swim area is closed at that time, which often happens. We'll have one or two sections of the beach that are red flagged and others will be yellow or green. Certainly monies spent on a lifeguard program, which will also bring jobs to South Haven and provide another talent pipeline for emergency services teams, would be monies well spent versus taxing existing resources to drive such measures as execution and enforcement. Again, if any of you would like to revisit any aspect of a potential program, please, as always, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm always happy to support these efforts through my depth and breadth of knowledge in this area. So just reach out.
Sounds good. Cam, thank you. Thanks for those suggestions.
Mary Hasley, 726 North Shore Drive. Thank you for this ordinance. I'm glad to see some trying to follow through and complete some of the efforts that have been undertaken by citizens, providing input. With regard to, I'll just go through with some of the items. The unsafe debris washing ashore, what does washing ashore mean? How close does it have to be to the shore to result in closure? One line above that, close it due to human health and safety risk. I think it should be or safety risk to give you more flexibility. With regard to wave height in excess of 8 feet, where are you measuring that? At the beach, at the start of the swimming area? I believe it changes in height throughout that distance. With regard to closure, how are they going to be informed? What if some people are in the water already? Putting up a sign tells them nothing. So that I see as a problem. With on line 2, I think there's a typo. It should be or portion of beach, not of portion of beach. With regard to entering the water, I think maybe you should consider safely accessing the water to reinforce commonly used safety rules and procedures. And how are those safety rules and procedures set? Is that set by the state? Otherwise, it's vague. I appreciate the fact that several boarders have given input on this, but looking at video, skimboarding does not seem to be commensurate with really huge waves. So I really question whether that should be included specifically. And this is open-ended, so it's not necessarily prohibiting it. But I don't think that that should necessarily be called out. With regard to fees, I think not only the fee, but as alluded to, what about shays? So if a person falls in, or if a swimmer who's in there by exception doesn't do something right, the city shouldn't have to pay for shays to respond. They should be, in addition to the fees of C, and same with the pier, they should have to pay for the expense of shays responding. And this should apply to boarders too. They shouldn't go out there and then be exempted and not have to pay extra fees. And with regard to exceptions, what about exceptions for scientists who may want to go out in the lake during the storm and measure it? That's how they find out about erosion, and that's not been included. Only vacation, not actually information that would help us. I think that, yeah. And I just reiterate with regard to, I think it does need to be clarified that body surfing, although surfing is used, body surfing is not using a board. And so to ensure that the exception applies to board sports, that's emphasized. And again, safely accessing the water. And I believe it's vague to say enter or attempt to enter. What is attempt to enter? Does that prohibit someone from walking along the beach? I think that opens it up to too many issues. I think it needs to be more clear in that respect. That's what I have for this version. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I have something quick to say. Mark, 2 Chestnut, I live right on South Beach. I see the pier every day. And tell you guys the truth, you can't build a gate high enough or wide enough to stop stupid. I see stupid out there every day, walking on ice, being out on the waves with their kids that shouldn't be out there. What about the guys that try to monkey crawl around the gate and fall in? I mean, gates don't work. They just won't work. And it's just another obstruction to our pier and our beach. And I've seen some pretty wicked weather out there too. I don't know how well that gate's gonna hold up when that ice comes and the storm really comes. It's gonna end up probably have to be rebuilt every spring because it's gonna be laying down. That's all I gotta say.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Anybody else? All right. Seeing none. Any other council questions, comments?
think you could address the body surfing with equipment, because a body surfer actually will have paddles on their hands. They'll have fins on their feet for body surfing. Otherwise, if they don't have that equipment, they're not body surfing. They're just trying to swim in the waves. Skimboarding, what we see people skimboarding is you see kids running across the shore, tossing the board down, but that's not skimboarding. Skimboarding is actually going out, catching the first wave, and then riding it back to the beach. That's where I think if you see a kid sitting there on the beach throwing a skimboard, well, that's not skimboarding. That's just playing the shore break. Just to address that so people understand what that is. As far as the gates go, I hear what you're saying. I have a 18-year-old, but it will help with the mom with her stroller and 4 kids that are about 2 years old, and she's dragging them out. She's not going to lift her stroller up and put it over and then walk out with them. That's kind of what I've got.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I mean, and we do have people that go out that make poor decisions. It happens. It will continue to happen. But we are trying to provide some guidance. So it's an attempt.
Well, like Mr. Bale said, dumb people are going to do dumb things, but it's for the casual person that doesn't, when the waves aren't that big, but they're just coming over the pier and that gets really slippery and that moss.
Right.
We can close it for those kinds of days. And
yeah,
the casual person that just isn't informed. So the gates will help for that.
Yeah. And to the point that was made earlier, I mean, just a nice big sign that says, do not enter.
Close.
You're going to get a $1,000 fee and whatever else we could throw at them.
And I think we could certainly explore rescue fees. The mayor and I snow ski, and if they have to go get you, and if you're out of bounds and they have to go get you, they bill you for it. So that's, there's practice of that happening. So that's something we could certainly explore if we have to go get someone out of the water.
Absolutely.
They could help recoup some of the costs.
Yep. Yeah. Go to Sleepy Bear Dunes. They make it very clear. Go down, but if we got to bring you up, it's going to cost you.
Would a rope and a sign serve the same purpose as a pipe, like in our drawing, so that we don't have the maintenance and upkeep that was brought up?
That wind's going to blow that sign around on a rope, though.
Yeah.
Just thoughts.
Put a tighter rope. I'm concerned about the maintenance, because the ice will take it out. I'm
Yeah,
a little bit concerned about the design of what we're seeing. I'm not
Right,
against it, but.
We tried to mirror the design of the safety rails to kind of, have some continuity out there. Plus, we'd seen that seemed to be well received in the Holland State Park barrier gate. But as we all know, there's a lot of ice that can build up on those, on just the safety fencing that is there. And now with latching, if it were for some reason was latched down, we may not actually have the ability to open back up if it was iced over. So, I mean, there's going to be some learning curve if council desires these barrier gates to be put up. We'll have to learn a lot more as we go through it.
Our existing railing that's out there, have we had any challenges with that?
Not that I know of, but I haven't seen too many, repair invoices come across my desk. But again, the blue safety fencing that stems from the pier all the way into the channel, that is maintained by the Corps. So we don't really have to do too much fixing or painting. They do that themselves. But what we do have out there, I think we maintain, i.e. the catwalk, so we haven't had too much in my mind. But this would be something new.
I just don't recall ever going down and seeing sections of the existing railing that which we're looking to mirror broken or, again, maybe I've not seen it, but but anyway, okay. Any other council questions, comments? If not, do you have enough guidance, some suggestions for us and some public comments to?
I do. I think that I'll be touching base with Attorney Curcio, so when we bring this back.
Okay, so we have a motion. Let me go here. So we have the motion and the second to introduce. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It's introduced. Thanks again for coming, Clark. Thanks for sticking around for that topic. Appreciate it. Next, we're going to be receiving a report summarizing the activities of the various city departments throughout the 2021 calendar year. This is the fun part of the year. It is the end of the year. It's our last meeting, so it's a chance for our city staff to show off all the fun things we've got to do, despite having to deal with COVID still.
It doesn't look like it's going away, so we'll be continuing to deal with COVID for some
End
time.
it, please.
So we wanted to kind of align these with your fiscal year priorities. So go ahead, Griffin, go ahead with the first page. So one of the things that we started to do is we kicked off with the M140 corridor revitalization plan and 425 agreement. As you can see, just based on the work you've done here tonight, we're extending that from Elm Street, where the first commercial rehab district was north of there. This pulls in all those properties south, and then the new properties that we will have under the city's incorporated in the city for the next 10 years. Go ahead, next slide. We also worked with LMC to acquire lots that the college was not using at this time, and in fact was having it farmed in our industrial park. So we have pulled those back in, and we are marketing those to see what we can do to spur some development and get some job creation in the I-196 Business Park. Next slide. And then these are just some of the activities we've done this year, the business resource sheet, the priority sites list, commercial rehab abatement applications, and we've had quite a few. Business retention visits, expansion assistance, ombudsman services. We've met with the businesses, I think, every Friday, all year, my year with yourself. We have been looking into broadband expansion. We have achieved redevelopment-ready community certification, and we've maintained that program so far. And we've also inked an agreement with Market Van Buren for economic development services. Fiscal year priorities number 2, we have been working on addressing housing needs. We've worked on the Overton site redevelopment. Currently, that is a plan that will be going to the Planning Commission. I think they had a preliminary review on the 16th. We'll have further conversations at the Planning Commission. Sherman Hills is a stalled development that has received some inquiries. I know we've talked to utilities with several folks out there, but so far nothing has been coming to our desk right now. We also have been looking at some plans with market rate housing in the Central Business District, but again, those plans are ongoing and nothing's here just yet. The fiscal year priority number 3, which is Central Business District maintenance and improvements. Now, we have been working very diligently with the developer at the Hales property. As you know, we've had a number of those stakeholder meetings with people just to kind of get some input on what those buildings could look like. We also have a plan going to enlarge the Dyckman Street bathrooms from, I think, 2 to 10. So that's a major improvement. Also, we've had more statues, public art, murals, and bike racks being put in the downtown. These bike racks, as you can see here, were painted by local artists and installed around town. This was an art project with the CVB and the Arts Center. Our 4th priority was working on diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. We had contract renewals with some of our unions this year, and we looked at gender neutral language. We also wanted to make sure that we were getting greater reach for our job postings. And we've had implicit bias training for our police officers. We've been working on our proclamation statement. We've got a kiosk now in the lobby. We've updated our Title IX plan, worked on our score sheet, and also had Juneteenth this year, an official Juneteenth. Next page. Some of the things we also did is we've been working with Entergy and Palisades. They've been hosting unconscious bias training, and all the city leadership, all the department heads, myself, have been going through that training. It's a very good one. Hopefully we can get counsel in for that one. It's led up by Mr. Eddie Polk. We've been working with Lakeshore Ethnic Diversity Alliance. And Ottawa County, we're talking with their DEI director and interim administrator to discuss a DEI climate assessment. So we've been making good progress on this priority. Next slide. For our priorities for number 5, which is the planning, management, and conservation of the waterfront, we had our North Marina project that was started off in 2020. We just wrapped up our final punch list item this year. So that was been pretty good. We also know that there's also some some work being done at the Michigan Maritime Museum as they renovate their campus and expand out over there. We don't have any new photos. Of course, they did just knock down their building, and they're putting up a brand-new building over there. Next slide. We have also worked with the Land Information Access Association, or LEA, for the coastal resiliency study. And based on that, we've had an ad hoc committee at the Planning Commission level looking at shoreline armoring and what does shoreline protection mean in our ordinance. We've also partnered with Michigan Technological University and Michigan State University for a couple different studies that are happening out on our beach area looking at erosion and the effects of erosion. Our harbor line review is being undertaken at the Harbor Commission level. That's still in the gestation. Right. Thank you. Number 6, well, good thing is we already had this one December 6th, so we don't have to go through that one again, but that was a pretty in-depth review. Priority number 7, development of a community vision statement. We will be working with Greg Guidance LLC to develop a vision and values and differentiation for the city of South Haven. We looked at that, I want to say December 6th, was that? Earlier than that, but council made the decision. We've already inked the contract with Greg, and he'll be reaching out to you all for doing your interviews with him.
He has reached out. Hopefully you've all got the email. Signed up for a day.
All right. Again, we've already talked about priorities number 8 at our previous council meeting. Number 9, budgetary restraint and fiscal responsibility. We have introduced a new timekeeping system with an emphasis of reducing overtime, and then also tracking why that overtime was necessary. We also had a very good negotiation for the PLC contract and our health insurance. So as you can see in that graph right there, we have had a decrease of overtime for the last 4 years. The other things that we've done under this priority is that we have combined several staff positions for a savings of approximately $71,000. We've also been able to contract out certain pavement marking jobs, savings of nearly $20,000 in materials, equipment, and labor. We are still saving about $25% of replacement lead services. And using Cape Seals as a maintenance methodology on street plans will save us around 70 to 80% per street project. So we can get more streets done and keep those Pacer rating high. So then we'll go on to these department updates. The building department, I'm going to let Griffin walk you through this one.
Sure, thank you. So in regard to the building department, we're going through quite a few staffing transitions there right now. So I appreciate everyone's patience with the building department. But in regard to the statistics that are on this slide, these are some statistics regarding zoning and building permits issued through the end of November. Specifically, permits issued, the number in parentheses next to it is the change from the previous year. So for example, if there were 27, that means that's 13 more than the year before. Fees collected. We have similar information regarding some of the others on this next slide. And at the end of the day, just looking to highlight that we've collected almost $50,000 more in fees this year, issued approximately 50 more permits this year. And I know there were a number of questions from council specifically regarding the number of single-family homes being built in the city. So through the end of November this year, there were 66 permits issued for single-family homes. Noting with that, depending on the construction, there can be multiple permits issued per home. But as of the date when this data was put together, 9 single-family homes had been constructed and issued occupancy permits this year.
Still a pretty impressive number.
Yes, and that's high compared to
that's a lot of new homes getting
for new construction.
Yes,
correct.
That's a very good thing.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Is there a permit required for new seawall construction?
There is a building permit required for that, yes.
It says on here, docks, pilings, and seawalls, 0 permits issued and 0 fees collected for 2021?
Yes.
Yes. So there are a few of, I'm trying to find where the other one was.
I know of quite a bit of seawall that went in this summer.
Yes, and I do as well, and that's where I'm wondering if maybe for this year those fell under a different line for some reason or the other. But yes, there were several. I would have to look into specifically
Thank you.
where different things fell this year. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to the city clerk, we've had an increase in a couple different things. We did not have a presidential election, so you did see those numbers go down for the voter turnout from last year. But we did see very high, continued high absentee ballots issued and received. So that's showing that people are definitely getting out there and voting. We did see nearly a doubling of the FOIA requests from last year to this year. Next slide. So this kind of explains why the voting, as you can see, in 2020, we had 16, over 1,637 absentee ballots requested and returned. Over 1,016 were requested and 1,637 was returned. But as you can see, as that's not a presidential, that number kind of levels off. All right, code enforcement actions. Looks like we've issued 11 municipal civil infractions for a variety of short-term rentals, building or zoning. We've issued 4 stop work orders, 4 unauthorized building fees. We've taken 3 zoning complaints or property maintenance issues to circuit court. And we've worked on other contacts and warning letters throughout the city over the year. Customer service, those are the staff that you come in and you see them, folks. They'll help you pay your bill, get an account turned on, or help you direct where's the best place to get your question answered. Those folks are kind of issued there. There's Tammy, Cynthia, and Karen. And they've answered over 13,000 phone calls, over 26,000 emails, and over 9,000 face-to-face interactions. And you can see the breakdown of how they do a majority of their business. 55% of it's handled by email. Customer service also has nearly 35 million and 57,000 payments taken in and processed by those 3 ladies and Sue up front. Payments are received at the front counters, and the night deposit box which is the box that's as you're driving out of City Hall parking lot north. It's right there. You can just drop that in. We collect it every day, as well as your daily mail. So that kind of shows you all the different payments that we receive. Majority of the payments we receive are utility payments, followed by tax payments and other payments. We opened 888 new accounts this year, and a variety of other payments, additional services provided there. And customer team members have been out at community events. We had the Blueberry Festival 5K, and of course we got to join the Juneteenth celebration at Elkenberg Park. So the finance department, this just kind of talks about our expenses by category. It does say fund, but this actually encompasses more than your general fund. It also includes your non-major funds, which will be your streets, your narcotics, those kind of things. And as you can see, we are seeing some negative changes there because we try to cut down on expenses. So we've got those kind of listed there. Next one. And this is just kind of a graphic explaining where those expenses fall into. Police and fire being your majority of them. And this is revenue by category. And this kind of shows you where we have seen a majority of change. A lot of those would be grants, and some of the grants we would include for like Center Street. We got a reimbursement and insurance reimbursement, so that's why you're seeing some of those funds change like that. Additionally, we did receive some CARES Act funding for COVID. Okay, and that's a graphic just showing you what was the numbers on the previous page. Next slide. All right, this is the mayor's favorite slide.
That's right.
And I can explain why. And it's really hard to see the bottom, but I can explain what you're reading here on the bottom. But ultimately, this is a dollar bill. Thank you, Griffin, for kind of zooming in there. And this kind of explains of the totality of the taxes that a homeowner may pay or a business owner may pay. This is the breakdown of where does your tax money go to each of the components that we have to share those taxes with. So the city of South Haven is one component, which is approximately 37% of the taxes. Then you have a slice going to the Memorial Library, slice to senior services. You have a very large slice going to Allegan and Van Buren counties. You have a slice going to Lake Michigan College. And you have a slice going to the South Haven Public Schools. Then there's a part that goes to the state education tax and Van Buren ISD. Roughly 51% of the taxes that are collected are for education purposes. I'm going to try to run through this one. If I need Kim, I'll just say help. For human resources, we had 21 positions posted. We have filled 16 of those positions. 4 were filled internally, 12 were filled externally. And you can kind of see from 2020 to 2021, we had our recruitment numbers look a lot better because we had more candidates applying. We had 362 candidates versus 308. We selected 134 candidates for interview. 104 candidates came in to interview, so we did have some folks who were selected but either found other jobs or did not come in, but we ended up hiring 44 folks, and that's for our part-time, full-time, and seasonal. Next slide. Currently, we have 5 positions open right now. Now, I think one or two of them maybe have dropped off. I think Water Streets and Sewer may have dropped off. Yep, we're interviewing for that soon, but we still, and I think we've made an offer on code enforcement, but we see marina manager, planning and zoning administrator, wastewater treatment superintendent. Currently, we have 92 current employees. 82 of those are full-time. We have 10 part-time and 0 seasonal now. And of course, in March, that's probably going to change as we start to ramp up for the season. For our 2021, we had the Novacom timekeeping. Again, that was our big push to keep overtime and keeping our attendance, and of course, just making sure why things are being, where's the overtime going, who needs it, why is it being used. COVID-19, making sure we're prepared, having our response plan. We had to update that every time something new came out. Kudos to Kim for getting that done. We've implemented a new performance management system, which will help us do our annual reviews. We conducted police contract negotiations, which was ratified earlier this year by the City Council, as well as the Local Officers Compensation Commission. Well, their recommendation was reviewed by this board earlier this year. Now, information technology, I probably won't do it justice that Phil could, but they have responded to nearly 800 requests for service, and those are their IT help desk tickets. This is for internal processes only. Go ahead, next slide. They have an average of over 700 endpoint nodes that they have to maintain and keep working around the city. This includes phones, switches, printers, monitors, desktops, laptops, cell phones, modems, virtual services, wireless access points, and CCTV cameras. So the cameras that may be working on the bridge, making sure things are going on well, they maintain those as well. These are just a list of the digital assets they maintain around the city. You may recognize some of those places: City Hall, Police and Fire Complex. We have many of our substations on there, the marinas. Several parks have digital assets in them, such as I think Elkenberg Park. We have Wi-Fi there and around town. Next slide. Some of the major accomplishments this year: we have a core network of switches. They replaced those. Modernization of parking enforcement. We did have those new kiosks rolled out. We also have a new parking enforcement vehicle that has this new technology that can take a picture of a license plate and generate a ticket if the parking fee had not been paid. We've been using Nixle for the community and beach safety announcements. We've worked with Hash to install a 360-degree lighthouse camera, and we've worked with security upgrades and Wi-Fi to install at Elkenberg Park. And we've continued the marina and downtown Wi-Fi expansion. For the police department, we've got our 18 police officers, 14 road patrol, 2 plainclothes and detectives, 1 administrative, and 1 IT. For our police calls, for the police-only calls, we've had nearly 4,000 calls for service. As you can see, July is by far the most, is the heavy call month, heavy call volume, but that tapers down, as you can see. We routinely do assist to shays, over 5,000 calls we assist with shays, and as you can see, the summer months, with July being the peak month. Officer daily activities, generally tasks take up a majority of time, but we do vehicle patrol, investigation, foot patrol. We did have several requests for vehicle patrol this year for either speeding or loud music or, things of that nature. I know Monroe Boulevard, South Haven Street, or I'm sorry, South Haven Place, 6th Avenue had a request for additional vehicle monitoring for speed and things like that. For the police department, we did join the Van Buren County Dive Team. We have officers Kevin Wildy and Phil Poole who've been equipped and certified as scuba divers, and they were assigned to the dive team. Officers Wildy and Poole are also paid on-call firefighters and EMTs with shays. The dive team does monthly training on Lake Michigan as well as Lake Arvesta, Lake Cora, and Scott Lake. They've responded to 3 active callouts this year. There was a drowning at Ackley Lake. There was a South Pier evidence recovery, and there was a Columbia Township evidence recovery. And they plan to do more training this winter. Our K-9 team, we've got some certification going on here with K-9's Riker and Rocco. Both passed their certification tests. K-9 Rocco is certified in detection of explosives. The K-9's assisted in several trackings for fleeing suspects in 2021. This is a slide showing the combined wages over time, so since fiscal year 17 and now fiscal year 21. Yep. And again, this is police overtime from fiscal year 17 to fiscal year 21 of aggression over time, showing those commitments to budgetary restraint. We have police department in Shays. They share an information center. This information center is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. They are open for phone calls for general information. They have a lobby. They dispatch for Shays and do callbacks for still alarms, general alarms. They do DPW requests such as electric outages. Thankfully, we haven't had too many of those with the high winds that we've had. Clerical tasks, burn log entries, dictation and notes, and things such as that. I do see Brandon here, so if there's anything Brandon wants to kind of jump in, please let me know. But these are the Shays calls for service. The mayor and I both sit on the Shays board, and what we can tell you is that in the last 3 years, we have been hitting we've been hitting record numbers for the last 3 years. So you can see that with that progression with the gray line. Ever-increasing calls for service. We've worked with Shays with beach safety, as well as the Nixle Text Beaches, BEACHES, to get water safety education out there with social media alerts, updates, and such as that. The training hours increased. Shays has the new Aqua Eye, the underwater sonar drone. They also have a drone that can drop like payload capabilities, so they can actually drop, a inflatable device. And they also have an infrared camera on one of their drones. The good thing is that we had 0 water rescues this year. We had such good education going out there that happily we were not called to the beach for a rescue. Shays undertakes fire prevention. I believe that in October, that's our fire prevention month. They visited 7 schools around the town, presenting fire prevention training to 998 students. They hosted the 20th annual Fire Safety Fun Fair, which nearly 300 children attended. Shays members have logged over 4,000 hours of training in 2021. As you can see, we had some water training there. We had some extrication training, ice training, as well as, I think, vehicle extraction training. Shays inspections, they do a variety of inspections. They do commercial pre-plan inspections. They do site reviews. They also undertake our short-term rental inspections. They also do hydrant flow tests. Those are the inspections they've done. They've also helped with the new library and the hospital and wound clinic. Matt Day was our Shays Firefighter of the Year. The Life Saving Award was awarded to Joanna Quinn, and another Life Saving Award was awarded to Allegan County Deputy Jacob Gage. So those folks are on the right. Ms. Quinn and Mr. Gage are on the right, and then Matt Day and Chief Hins are on the left. So that is our very, very concisely put together staff update.
Well done.
Thank
It's
you.
always fun to have done. And it's just a reminder, we have a lot of amazing staff people as I look at all the work that's done from you to just all the way up and down, police, fire, everybody. Remarkable. So a lot of good work being done, and I can't thank all of you enough. So questions, comments for a year of work? Nothing. You're awed us. All right. Let's roll onward then. Thank you again to all. That's a lot of work to put that together, I know. A lot of work. Citizens in the audience will be heard on items not on the agenda. So if there's something someone would like to discuss that we have not already talked about tonight, come on up. You'll have up to 5 minutes.
Dan Agnello, 964 Everett Parkway. I just want to thank Bill Hunter for coming out, and I sent him an email about parking and trail side, and he realized, his staff realized there was no traffic control order, so they wrote an order. And of course, there are no parking on any of our streets at all, except for the bump outs. And I'm glad he did that because there's a no parking sign now across the street from me. And if these people that have 4 bedrooms in their duplexes park there, I'm going to be calling the parking lady to write them tickets, okay? And I'm still disappointed that the staff did not make recommendations on heights. I know what the ordinance says, but it's a bait and switch. I told you what happened to Mr. Matt O'Connor. He said in September that he was going to make houses the same as what we had. And we have 4, as I call them, skyscrapers on Elkenberg. And Tim, one of the other 3 members of the 3 people and developer, when he was talking to me about when he was changing the design to duplexes, he said, Dan, hey, what do you think about us building that berm higher and making a 3-story house in the back and a 2-story in the front? And I said, no. I said, you're changing the topography, the elevations and everything, and that's not in the law. And if we don't restrict them, I know it's not on the agenda.
It's on,
but
exactly.
if we don't restrict it, they're going to do what they want. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. City manager comment. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I had to wait to get access to the aisle. Mary Hasley, 726 North Shore Drive. I echo Dan's concerns and point, just another example where at Trailside Everett, the developer just ignores concerns. My understanding is a tree in the curb line got cut. I believe that's been brought to the attention through comments. To the best of my knowledge, nobody's supposed to touch those but the city. And he cut it to put in a driveway. Again, the statement was they assumed the heights would be similar to the other houses in that development.
Mary, we've already been through this topic. If you've got something new, please
Yes.
bring it. If not, I need you to wrap up.
With regard to our developments, over the summer, I have talked to over 100 people in a short time frame, and they're all concerned about density, and they're concerned with short-term rental, and with the exclusion of our PUDs from short-term rental, even though at that time maybe we needed development, Trailside, we're approaching 50% as short-term rental. At Maplegate, my understanding is all of the homes that have sold, only 1 is long year-round. At Everett, at Harbor Glen, Harbor Park, I believe most of them are short-term rental. We need to take into consideration development and have not a short-sighted, but a long-term plan. And we're not seeing that. We're seeing development at developers' profit ahead of the citizens. We're not providing opportunities for the broad price range that was supposed to be happening at all of the different developments that we talk about. it keeps being the developer is controlling, and our citizens now feel like they don't even have a voice. That is what people whom I'm hearing from. And I'm not trying to make things up. I'm not making any accusation. But at meetings, I see a lot of people. I see them make comments. I see people look down at their papers, look away from the citizens, not show eye contact, and then at the end, make comments that are not well appreciated. We are here to voice our concern. We should not be dismissed, and we should be given true answers to our concerns. And when developments are allowed to proceed, objective data should be provided to substantiate the allegations used to support those developments. And before I end, I wish everybody a happy holiday. It's very unfortunate that we had to have such a contested hearing at the end of this year, but those could have been avoided, but I've already said that's been discussed and decided, again, against the desire of many people, especially those in the immediate vicinity and living very short distance from where it's happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? City manager comments. Miss Kate, happy holidays.
Well, happy holidays to you and happy holidays to the entire council. I know that as we wrap things up, I hope for everyone to have a happy and very safe holiday season. We have a very important, so I'm going to keep my comments to a minimum, but I have one very important thing to share, is that the City of South Haven will be conducting a phone system upgrade tomorrow, Tuesday, December 21st, between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. We will, as part of that update, phones to all city buildings will be down during this time. So we have put our temporary numbers up on our city website. They will also be released on Nixle tomorrow morning. And we hope that we will not need the entire time to update this city phone system. But in the meantime, we have issued phone numbers for City Hall, Public Works, Police, and Fire. 911 stays active. We have issued 3 phone numbers to get around with those 3 buildings. I can call them out here, but they are on our city's website. They will be issued on Nixle tomorrow morning. Again, this is also very good cost savings that we'll be doing. This should save us about $12,000 a year. So again, cell phones will be used. We've got the 3 numbers for City Hall, Public Works, Police, and Fire. It'll be down tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. to use those 3 numbers if you need to get a hold of any city staff. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Questions, comments? Well done. Good year. So thank you. All right. Council comments. I'll start on my left. Good evening.
I just want to wish everyone a happy holidays.
Ditto.
No comment.
My question is just a question for city staff. I continue to get almost weekly questions about social district. And it's almost to the point where either vote it up or vote it down, do something. And I said, okay. So social district, I just keep getting those questions. And then this being Chris Campbell's last meeting, I just wanted to thank Chris for his service, and it was certainly a pleasure to serve with him as my fellow Ward 2 person. He was really easy to work with, and again, thank you for serving our community. And Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to the city staff and all the city workers and everybody living in the city and even in the township.
Good man. I like it. Mr. Campbell.
All right, well, thank you. First, I want to say, shop local. You'll find the best deals downtown. There's a lot of businesses down there. Visit them. And this is my last meeting. I've had a lot of fun. I've learned a lot, and I'm going to miss it. And honestly, I've had a lot of fun working with you guys. So thank you, and good luck to Wendy. So.
Thank you. Well done.
I also want to recognize a council member to my left, Chris Campbell, and his work on the Beach Safety Committee, Downtown Development Authority, and everything else. It's been great work, so it's been good working with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
All right. I'll jump on. Yes. Well done. Good work. You're a youngster, you know what I mean? You got little kids. We need those, so I'm just saying. But well done. I hope still maybe next year we'll have some discussions about ways to attract people to this community. One of them, I think, still continues to include recreation, so I hope we can have some more discussion about that, so I will recruit you for that. Again, just as you look at those photos on what gets done down here, a lot of work happens behind the scenes, and I just want people to, a lot goes on a given day down here to make sure the lights go on, you can turn on your water, your toilet flushes, and all that good stuff happens. So some of it's not very exciting and sexy, but it's super important. I know Bill's not here for me to compliment him on another 50-mile-an-hour wind day, and my lights didn't go off, so. I appreciate all that goes on down here, top to bottom, everybody included. Congratulations, Mr. Griffin Graham. I think you're going to have a very fun New Year's Eve. Congratulations on that upcoming wedding. Congratulations to our police officers that are recognized tonight, and welcome to our new officer, Officer Garcia. Exciting to see a new officer. I will ditto Chris's comments. Shop local. Go ice skating, watch a movie. The movie theater was busy tonight when I pulled in. Did you notice that? Spider-Man. Go watch it. So go watch a movie. So it's exciting to see crowds again at the movie theater. So anyway, go support the great people at the movie theater. So just spend money downtown. Don't support Amazon. On that note, happy holidays, everybody. Motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Happy holidays.